So how should startups scale up in Southeast Asia, part two? So as part of our webinar series, GST webinar series, we had a discussion with Paul Ark, who is a general advisor at Gobi Partners. So to tell you a little bit about Gobi Partners, they're one of the longest standing Pan-Asian venture capital firms. So they're very focused and dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs in emerging and underserved markets. And one of their core mission is to help entrepreneurs join the fight against the world's most pressing problems, obviously using tech. So here's our discussion.
Yeah, no, I think that is, well, I agree with everything that William said, but I would also add that, nowadays, because we live in a more digital world than we did, 13, 14 months ago. I mean, I think, we felt like, we were highly digital and we're online, but, many startups tend to spend an inordinate amount of time looking at their home markets first, and probably for far too long before they start thinking about their second and third markets. Now because we live in a very digital world, we can't connect with our target markets in a very analog way as many business models have in the past. We're forced to start thinking about a wider customer base from day one, and because we're all digital, there's no reason why we can't appeal to a wider market immediately. So, maybe the model of saying own your home market first before you expand is probably not the right approach in an all digital post-COVID world. And so for a lot of startups, I know that it seems like a daunting thing. Like, how do I reach multiple product bases, at once? And I always point towards markets like Singapore, like Israel, like many of the Nordic markets that have extremely small domestic markets, anywhere between, 6 to 8 million people, which is not a very large market. So many of the startup giants, these are also markets that punch far above their weight in producing, $100 million companies, $500 million companies, $1 billion companies. And many of these entrepreneurs recognize from day one that they have to be global from day one. Because, if they only focus on their home market and they do a really good job, they've pretty much saturated their market inside of 12 months. So, even before they start fundraising, most of the time the fundraising is to scale up on a global basis. So, I push startups, any startup in Southeast Asia, even if, we're in a country like Thailand with 70 million people, or Philippines, Vietnam, you're talking 90, 100 plus, that market is now deeply constrained because now you're focusing online. And so, you need to think more regional from day one. Digital is the enabler to do that, but it gets back to William's point, where you gotta hit a wider target market, with each demographic having a different preference, or the business model has to be customized for each of those markets. So the challenge is definitely a different challenge. Some are probably better equipped than others, but I think the new reality is, you're regional or global from day one, and you have to start thinking about markets that you may not even visit until after the pandemic subsides.